What's going on, guys? This is Damien from The Lookout and welcome to our BT21 meta tier list, like meta prediction tier list. Oh yeah, it's gonna be crazy. Do not skip the beginning, you will get lost. If you just click to the very end, you will be very confused. This time around, some things are gonna be different from yesterday. Plus, I've also put in these tier explanations that you can always go back to that will make things a lot more understandable. So yeah, but before we do this, one very important thing, huge shout out to our patrons: Jacob, Miguel, Nave, Ryan, Frank, Scotty, Bixen, Bryce, Derek, Adnan, Jakub and Golden Feather Kiryu. These are our $2 and up patrons. They buy us coffee, they support us this way, and they keep this machine going. Because, yeah, to do this consistently, we need a lot of coffee, and we're one step closer to buying a new table. So, guys, if you want to support us this way, you don't need to, but it's really highly appreciated. Patreon link is in the description below. If Patreon isn't your thing, shout out to our channel members. We have channel membership. It's only $2. You get like custom emojis and membership badges. Just check out the join button below. And yeah, I think that's all. Let's dive into this very, very long tier list. Let's go. Roll the video, actually. I'm sorry. Roll the video! As with all of our videos, let's start with a breakdown. So, this is my BT21 meta predictions tier list. First, you're gonna get an important update from me because it's gonna be different than the yesterday's one, and I'm gonna explain why. I'm gonna explain you the tiers, and then we're gonna jump into the tier list. It's huge, it's like over an hour long. So yeah, if you have nothing else to do, you can just listen to me be horribly wrong. Let's go! Important update. So, some tiers from yesterday, some leaders will be going up a tier or two or more. You will see. First off, yeah, I apologize for yesterday's list because this one is gonna be a bit different. Some things will remain where they were yesterday, but some things will be going up. And the idea why I think I was wrong is I had trouble identifying that this metagame is gonna be different because we're entering a much slower meta. If you look at it, there's really not many hyper aggro decks anymore. There's nothing that can kill you turn 3 anymore. And I've judged all of these these new leaders by the older standards. So when you, for example, Shlonku is going to be one of the best decks, I think. One of the best red decks, definitely. So, spoiler, immediately. But when you look at Shlonku and you're like, hey, he does things on turn 4 onwards, that's awful, that's too slow. It's no longer awful and slow because he doesn't die to Sin on turn 2, turn 3, you know, so it's good now. It's much faster now. So what was considered super slow is now normal. This is why some leaders will be going up a tier or two in the tier list. So yeah, let's jump into tier explanations. Tiers explained, because I think you need a tiers explained slide, because it's an hour long or so, so you just kinda tend to forget what I said about tiers. So just in case, tier 0 OP, but there's nothing in this one. There's gonna be one in this one. I've made this before I made a tier list. Tier 1. So these are the hard-coded rules that we are following. The best performing decks and the decks which will warp the meta around them. I expect them to be dominant at events. So tier 0 would be Gogeta Sin, but tier 1 would be like Gamma, for example. It's not a tier 0 OP broken, incredible, just kills you, can't do anything deck, but it would be, for example, like Gamma, super dominant and meta warping basically. Tier 2, high competitive decks with the potential to top quite often, but I don't expect them to actually warp the meta. So the margin, please, for the love of God, please keep this in mind. The margin, the difference between tier 1 and tier 2 is this small. It's this small. The only difference is the idea that tier 1 has what it takes, just like this 1% more to warp the meta around it and to win more consistently. So this can be either like because it's the best performing, because it is the most dominant in the color, because it's the color's representative who's doing exceptionally well. But you could switch a lot of places between tier 1 and tier 2. You could just flat out switch a lot of them. Tier 3, and you wouldn't be wrong, because the difference is so small. Tier 3, your rogue decks, which have the potential to be competitive and might top, but you won't see a lot of them. You won't be seeing a lot of them, and they probably won't win, but they have potential to top. That is tier 3. So once again, not bad. Tier 4, casual decks for locals or for casual play, and then the other tiers are, well, you will see. More of tiers explained. Okay, so tiers 1 and 2 are the likely best / dominant decks around. That's what I told you. What goes into tier 1 might as well be in tier 2. Tier 2 decks might as well be in tier 1. Like the difference, you can actually make solid arguments for a lot of them. Now, of course, there's gonna be some of them which you look at like, yeah, this is tier 2, but this is never gonna be tier 1. There are those decks, but there's also a good portion of them which can make it into tier 1. It's like such small difference. Small difference. Often enough, it just comes to me not being super convinced that they're tier 1. So just super small difference. Tier 3. Okay, so this is the biggest thing that you need to keep in mind. If anything else, just remember this. Tier 3 doesn't mean bad. It doesn't mean bad. There is a misconception that because a deck is in the rogue tier, that it's bad. It isn't. It might even beat some of the tier 2 decks or even some of the tier 1 decks, but I don't see it topping consistently. Like, tier 3 decks are competitive decks. They have what it takes to top, but they just aren't as consistent in it as tier 1 and 2. So they're literally rogue decks. Tier 3 is where decks which can top locals but will likely struggle on competitive events start. You know, they aren't bad or trash. They just don't have what it takes to go toe to toe with tiers 1 and 3. And then tier 5 is actually bad / trash. Let's jump into the tier list. Okay, everyone, now that we went through explanations and everything, let's jump into the tier list. So, if you're just jumping into the tier list, please, for the love of God, go check out explanations for tiers. I'm just gonna zoom it in a little bit. Yeah, we can do it like this. I think this is much better. Okay, so, as I've said, we are starting, as I have said, the next metagame will be slower, much slower than the previous one. With that in consideration, let's start with Golden Frieza. Now, there has been a lot of talk that yellow will be the next best color. I believe that yellow will be very, very good. I don't think that yellow will be as oppressive as red was, or like blue, because red and blue were the most oppressive ones solely because blue could fight yellow. Red, I'm sorry. So, with that in mind, when there's a slower meta, decks which are naturally slower or decks which really profit from a longer game are automatically better. And Frieza is one of them. Frieza is a leader, Frieza is one of those leaders who, the longer you fight him, the longer you play against him, the easier it is for him, basically. Once he gets his auto online, the more energy he gets, the more discount he effectively gets whenever he restands 2. Like, there's a reason why this is the only leader who can completely comfortably play the Golden Cooler SCR on 5. There's a reason why this guy can just hardcast a 7-drop. because he can just restand 2 then. So Frieza is very, very good in at going into the long game. And now without Hyper Aggro around, Frieza is just gonna get better. He has access to Robotic Riposte, he has access to Vegito SR, he has access to Yellow Sin, to Cooler SCR. Frieza's gonna be phenomenal in the upcoming metagame. I think Frieza is definitely like tier 1. I think Frieza is a tier 1 yellow deck. I'll try to use tier 1 sparingly. There are a lot of decks which can go into tier 1. I want to use it very sparingly. Then we have Yellow Sin. Honestly, I don't remember why I've put Yellow Sin here. Like, I don't. I thought I removed him, but okay, sure. Yellow Sin, I would not call him actual trash. Right now, I would not call him trash. I think that he's not bad. He's not bad, but he's not competitive. I think no one's gonna be mad if I just put him like in casual locals. He's good at the locals tier. He's not a bad deck. It's important to keep in mind how I've explained the tiers function. He's not bad because he's in tier 4. Like tier 5 is actually bad. Speaking of which, now we are looking at Vegeta ramp. So, Blue Good Stuff is better. Blue Good Stuff is a lot better now. Vegeta ramp is one of these decks which can actually profit very well from high cost Blue Good Stuff cards. However, he's also a slower deck, which you would consider is okay, because we are entering a slower meta. Vegeta can actually take his time now to get his big payoffs going, to start chaining his 6-drop, getting a billion energy. He can do this more comfortably now. However, Android 21 exists. The BT20 Android 21 exists. And that one is a gatekeeper for blue decks. For a lot of them, that one is a gatekeeper. And when you're playing Vegeta ramp and you're looking to play into Android 21, into a metagame where Android 21 is, BT20, not expert, you need to ask yourself, like, okay, can I pressure her enough early on not to die and just to get my things going? And I don't think that the answer is yes here, because as a ramp deck, Vegeta profits a lot in the not later stages of the game, but effectively when he has more energy. And Android 21 really, really loves going against these slower blue decks. So I don't think Vegeta's gonna get much better. However, Oob 8 drop. Oob 8 drop is phenomenal. Like, I thought that it is amazing. I've talked with some players who showed me also how actually amazing Oob is, and the fact that Oob 8 drop is generic and you need only 2Z energy. You need just 2Z energy to getting going. I think that without Oob, I would put Vegeta, like in tier 4. Now I think Vegeta is like in tier 3. Even with Android 21, with Oob, I think Vegeta is better now. I think he is better. However, I would still put him in Rogue simply because, I'm just gonna put this immediately. Where is she? Where is Android 21? Okay, so look. Android 21 is, in my opinion, tier 2. It's not a tier 1 deck. It's tier 2. So I skipped a bit because it's basically gatekeeping a lot of slower blue decks. Now, slower blue decks which can't put on a lot of pressure early on, like Vegeta, unless you really build it a bit differently, but I'm talking more about archetypal builds plus the standard builds that we have seen so far. Because yeah, you can build like wacky decks, unconventional builds, which no one can predict and they can do very well. We're talking about, you know, when you think Vegeta GT, the image that pops into your mind. That's what we're talking about. And I think Android 21 gatekeeps decks like that. However, that doesn't mean that Vegeta still can go off and still top some events as a rogue deck. And now we have Gohan. Okay, so I have high hopes in Gohan. I don't think that Gohan really goes up a tier. I don't think, because trust me, I want to use tiers sparingly. I don't want to have everything in 1 and 2, or just like overcrowd one. Gohan did very, very well in the previous meta. It topped multiple times. I mean, that's the closest to very well that you can get in the previous meta. I don't think that anything really happened that's going to make him so much better, but I think that he will still remain a rogue deck. He won't have to compete with the hyper aggression that Sin and Gogeta used to put out, and he will be free to put out his own form of aggression, which can still be mitigated by these slower decks. But he's not bad. I think he's tier 3. I think he's comfortably rogue. I think we will continue seeing Gohan pop out here and there, but I think that like he's comfortably in tier 3. I don't think, like I told you, tier 2 and tier 1 are the ones that are really gonna dominate top tables. Tier 1's gonna dominate. Tier 2 is gonna be appearing often in top tables, in top standings. I don't think that Gohan is one of those decks, but I think that it can take a slot here and there. King Cold. Okay, so Green is much better now. Like, this is, I think this is just kinda, we can all agree, I believe that we can all agree, however you feel about Green, that saying that Green is much better now is an objective statement. Because without Gogeta running around, who just kills you, Gogeta flat out kills you if you're playing Green, unless the pilot is just awful and he plays into a floodgate or something. Green is much, much better. So now we need to take that into perspective and compare it with other decks. What does Green have? What does it not have? King Cold has something that other green decks don't, and that is he has a way to fight yellow, to fight yellow's floodgates. That's the big advantage that King Cold has over yellow. Sure, he's still gonna struggle, of course, but simply because he can just flood his board with field cards, he can play around Robotic, he can play around Vegito. This just makes King Cold much, much better. Now, here's the thing. I think that King Cold has competitive potential. He definitely has competitive potential. King Cold has been one of the best green decks for a very long time. He's been struggling since Zenkai came out. He still struggles charging Z energy, but he has very aggressive builds. There is a very, very aggressive critical aggro build of King Cold, for example, which can do very well in the upcoming metagame. There is a control version which is also very good. So King Cold definitely has potential, and I think he is going to top. I think he's gonna go into tier 3. Honestly, I think he might even be tier 2, but let's not be too wild. I think the reason why he goes into tier 3 is I don't think he's gonna dominate the top standings, the top cuts, but I also think that it's partially players' fault. And that's most of the tier 3. That's kind of the best way that I can describe tier 3. These decks can compete, they can top, they're just not used. And that's it. That's the perfect definition of a rogue deck. And I think that's going to be King Gold. Kai is the only hyper-competitive, hyper-aggressive deck left in the metagame. And I think that Kai is going to be among the best black decks. I think it's going to be among the better black decks. However, with the amount of now control decks, though control is so different and difficult in Dragon Ball, you know, if you came from some other games, like if you played, for example, let's say that you played a lot of Hearthstone, because everyone has played Hearthstone at some point, or like Magic, for example, control has ways of dealing with hyper aggro for cheap, consistently and stuff like that. It's not the same in Dragon Ball. It's not the same, basically, because the game is built around smacking your opponent in the face. So I think that Kai is still going to be a highly competitive deck. I think that current control decks can fight it. I think that it will get it won't get taken down a notch, but it won't really get much higher. Like, Kai didn't gain much from the recent ban list. What it got the Vegito TP card. It got the Vegito, which is a phenomenal card, but and it got the ability to keep it around. But other than that, I don't really believe that this one is really going step up. Because if you ask me, if you look at previous results, Kai was tier 2 last time around. It was tier 1 for black decks, basically. But in the overall picture, it was tier 2. It didn't warp the format around it, but it did top almost every single event. It did top, and sometimes even in 2 slots. And I don't think that it's going to top much more, because I have high faith in green keeping it in check, because not just green keeping Kai in check, but the idea that nothing in this deck has any protection whatsoever. I think that's gonna play a huge role going forward. And I don't think that Kai got what it needed to go a step up to tier 1, but it also doesn't go a step below. I think it just remains where it is. Mechikabura. I'm gonna cause Jeffrey to unsubscribe now. Mechikabura is a weird one. It's definitely a weird one. I expected it to gain a lot more support, because SSG Trunks got so much better support, and Mechikabura got a weird SCR, and it got some other tools to help you play the 8-drop. This deck is cool. This deck is definitely cool. Will it actually be topping events? Did it get enough in the current upcoming slower metagame? Did it gain enough to top events? I don't think so. I think that Mechi is just gonna remain in casual. I don't think that it got much. He can now cheat out the 8-drop. He has slightly better tools, but I think that if he had gotten a Z leader instead of an SCR, if he just got a raw power boost that you can use after you use your ultimate with him, he would have been so much better. I believe that he would have been so much better. Right now, I think he got a power boost that took him from like actually bad to like casual / locals. Keep in mind, please, before anyone gets upset, I've said this in the previous tier. Tier 4 doesn't equal bad. It doesn't equal bad. Tier 5 is bad. Tier 4 just means it doesn't have... I don't see it having what it takes to go into tier 3, tier 2 and just to start topping. So it's not bad, but I don't think that it's advancing from casual / locals. Jiren is awful. Jiren isn't the best. I've put it here because I really love Jiren. I'm super biased when it comes to Jiren, so I think Jiren will continue to do his own stuff at various schedules. I don't think that he's necessarily going like directly into trash tier, though an argument can be made for Jiren to go into trash tier, but I think that he's just gonna jump into tier 4. Because I'm biased, I love the Nipple Man, and I'm always gonna give Nipple Man a slight advantage. It's a very consistent deck. It's aggressive, it is consistent, it has million ways to search for things. There isn't a Dirty Burst anymore in the game, so that really helps him out, but it doesn't really help him go much higher, I think. Universe 7 Goku. Okay, so we are going full circle back to the old best red deck. And I think that this one... Okay, so did it lose anything? It didn't lose anything from the ban list, obviously. It only gained now with the Dirty Burst gone. He gained from the recent ban list. He can play. He can still play his SER. He can play. You can stretch it. You can say that he can play like Shlonku stuff in it or something. He didn't gain so much in power, but he didn't lose. He just profited when Dirty Burst went away. And now there's like this big competition for the next best red deck, and I think that Universe 7 is high up in that competition. I think that it is high. I don't think that it is tier 1. I'm going to put him into tier 2 for now. There's only a couple of red decks that can actually get into tier 2, tier 1, and I think this is one of them, because I don't see that this one really lost anything. Not that he really gained too much, except, no Dirty Burst, which helps. So I think this one is okay, but I think he's gonna struggle a bit. I think that some meal decks showing up in the upcoming metagame, which is slower, which meal decks benefit from. They are not really huge fans of being hyper aggroed down. I think some of them will give him a bit of a struggle, but I still think that he's gonna end up in tier 2 eventually. Trunks Jita. Okay, so I hate this deck. I hate the idea that it is still around. I think that Majin is much better, but the barrier blocker is still the barrier blocker, rests things. And the deck that kept it in check was Gogeta, who could just swing into it and kill it. Now you have Vegito to do that. You have the Vegito TP to just swing into his blockers and just kill them. However, it's not the same. When you have a card which can just flat out attack cards in active mode, and when you have a card which can do that and says no one combos. So it's not the same. So I think that Trunks Jita is going to go certainly into tier 1. I think he's going to once again be one of the best yellow decks now that Gogeta is gone. I really want to put him into tier 2. I might knock him down a bit because I really hate this deck, but I think that now it is a lot better. It actually gained a lot. So yeah. Trunks. Okay, so full disclosure, I did not play a lot of this deck. I'm not super comfortable with it. I will definitely not call myself an SSG Trunks player. This deck is very cool though. What I did do is I did check its support. And its support is actually phenomenal. Its support is very, very good. He has a free 20k Z leader, which is awesome. He has a boss monster on top of a boss monster, which is also awesome. He has Kai to support him, to help him regain his unison. He's very good. I think that he's very, very good at the moment. I think I am close between tier 3 and tier 2 with him. I think that I would put him into tier 2. But full disclosure, I am not a SSG Trunks player. Like, I think black is the color that I've played it the least of. So keep that in mind. I don't believe that it is tier 1. I definitely don't believe that it is tier 1. It's possible that it is tier 3. I think that it is tier 2. Then, Cooler. Well, this is the deck that I did play a whole bunch of. I've played so much Cooler. And I would argue that Cooler is now even flat out better than he used to be. I would argue that Cooler right now is just so much better that Red is gone. And I think I did pretty well with Cooler in the previous meta, I would say. So I think that Cooler is much, much better. He now has some other tools that he can use. He can use SS Son Goku decisions made if you want to do that. Though I do not highly recommend it, because Cooler really isn't a deck that charges a whole bunch of Z energy depending on how you build it. But I think that Cooler is just gonna have a blast in the upcoming metagame. I think Cooler is gonna have a nice time. Consider the following. We are entering a slower metagame. There is no Triumphant Together anymore. There is no Sin to remove Cooler's unisons. And aside from Trunks Jita, so far on our tier list, nothing has protection. Like, yellow decks don't really have protection. When you think like Majin Vegeta, red doesn't have protection. Frieza has Sin, and yellow decks have Sin, and Sin is stupid, but you have Goku Fated Rival, and you have the other 8 drop. So, I think Cooler just gained so much. Cooler gained so much. And I think that Cooler is definitely tier 2. Like, as someone who plays a ton of Cooler, I think Cooler is tier 2 right now. Tova Token, well, there's wonder where does it go? Well, we all know where that shit goes. Ripku. So Ripku, the dead Goku. We actually saw it. We saw Dane top with it in NA Regionals. Congratulations. I love seeing that guy top. Last time it was Broly Surge, if I recall correctly. So yeah, and keep in mind, this deck topped in the current metagame, showing that like it definitely has potential. I would not call it a high competitive tier 2 deck, but I would definitely, for now, put him in Rogue. For now. He has additional removal that he gains from Moob now, which is always awesome. It's a pretty consistent deck, and he has barrier. He has his boss monster with barrier. Barrier means a lot. Trust me, barrier means a lot. So I think that you might argue that it's gonna be better than tier 2. I would like to remind you that tier 2 doesn't mean bad, and I would like to remind you of what tier 3 doesn't mean bad and what it actually is. I think it's in a similar position with King Cold and a bunch of other decks that are gonna go into tier 3. It's a deck that can realistically top. It can top. It has what it takes to be competitive. It doesn't have necessarily what it takes to be highly competitive, and it's probably not going to be overly represented. But it definitely has what it takes to top. That's what this should be. Unlike, actual trash. So Pycon is not even... He's not even tier 4 if you ask me. I think this one is just bad. I think Bandai did Pycon dirty twice. However, if you look at the placeholder box art from the newest Zenkai set, Gogeta is making a return, which means that we are getting Janemba, which means that in Gogeta we might get some random Pycon cards that we can use. Maybe, we will see. I'm super excited for that one, because those of you who have been following the channel for some time know that Knockout Strike Gogeta is my favorite leader of all time. That I love that one so much. So, oh my god, half an hour and we have so much more left to go. Let's go, guys. Man, I can actually turn this into podcasts, how long they last. Next is Master Roshi, and I'm just going to flat out go out and tell you that there is a lot of conversation going around with Gohan, with Cell, with Cooler, with a lot of these green decks that are popping out of nowhere, and I'm going to flat out tell you that Master Roshi is the best one. I think Master Roshi is the best one by far. When it comes to green decks, I think Master Roshi is by far the best one. Gohan close second in my opinion. Gohan is close second, but I think Master Roshi is just insane. Think of it. In a meta where this deck shouldn't have thrived, it shouldn't have thrived, because you can't look at Sen and Gogeta and then look at Master Roshi and said yeah, this isn't dead on arrival. And Master Roshi was the best performing green deck. And now it got Gohan's boss monster. It got the decisions made Goku. Hell, it can even use the Floodgate if it wants to, because it has the Saiyan tag. It has Goku Oob promo to search for things. It's so good. Master Roshi is phenomenal. It has the critical Monkey Vegeta if you want to use it, because you start with a field card. Master Roshi is by far the best green deck. By far. Okay, not by far, because I think that Gohan is close second. Now let's go to King Piccolo. Okay, King Piccolo this is gonna be a bit controversial, and as you can see, we will be going over a bunch of leaders from the previous Zenkai sets. You can imagine where most of them will end up, but I just wanted to give some perspective on them. So, King Piccolo, it's super aggressive, it's super consistent, it's very strong, it swarms the board. I would argue that aside from Kai, it is among the most aggressive, fastest decks at the moment, because you will have Shlonku, who is going to be much higher than he was yesterday. But King Piccolo puts out a lot of pressure a lot faster, similar to Kai. For example, Shlonku takes off turns 3 to 4. King Piccolo already has a very established board on turn 2. Turn 3, he's already just slamming big things into you. So he's a leftover from the past when it comes to these older aggro decks. And he just lost his biggest weakness. Because King Piccolo's biggest weakness was dying to being negged. I think that was his biggest weakness. And now Sin is gone. So KP can just keep on saving his things. However, even with that in mind, I was going to put King Piccolo into tier 2. But even with that in mind, Yellow currently has so many tools which just flat out KO your things in rest mode. They just flat out KO. And now we're looking in a scenario where you can protect them from being KO'd. Can you generate enough resources to protect your field and keep slamming big guys, buffed guys basically, medium, but they become bigger, onto the field fast enough and start hitting fast enough to give yellow a run for its money before before Majin Vegeta, for example, slams enough of one cost removals and then just dries all of your Z energy and you can't protect your field anymore. I still believe that you can. I think King Piccolo is going to be much, much better because you don't need to protect everything. You just need to protect your key pieces. And for now, I'm going to put him into tier 2. I think, like other tier 2 decks, I think King Piccolo has what it takes to be competitive. I don't think that people are going to use him, really. So that's the issue here. Bardock, I hate Bardock. I hate Bardock as much as I hate Tova. So, yeah. You can guess where that one is going. Straight into trash. But, honestly, it's not, maybe, not complete trash. I have seen a couple of players do well with it. But I really don't like this one. I really, really hate Bardock. So I'm biased. Biased trash. Not biased tier 4. But let's put him into trash for now. Let's just put him into trash. Piccolo comes to join him in trash, because this deck literally doesn't do anything. It profits a bit more now that everything is faster, but I don't think that it flat out has what it takes. I honestly don't think that I wouldn't even take him to the locals. I haven't tested him in the current metagame, but I don't think that this one is much better, to be honest. Shroom and Salsa I'm actually gonna put into locals. I have seen Oli did okay with them, but Oli is an outlier. Oli can do well with basically anything. Ouija Time did reasonably well with Shroom and Salsa. He did reasonably well. So I think it's like casual locals. I think it's better, a bit better now that Sin and Gogeta aren't around. Trust me, I would just put him into trash, but I don't want to overcrowd trash. So I'm just gonna put him here. Saiyan Trio is trash. I don't think that this one got any better. I don't think that this one was... I don't even think that he was held back because of Sin and Gogeta. I think he was just bad. He's just bad. And that's where he belongs. The better one was Android 13, who is, in my opinion, definitely in the rogue tier. He's definitely in the rogue tier. Huge shout out to Alexander. I love watching Alexander top with wacky decks. If you haven't seen, we have his deck profile here on this channel. Alexander is the king of jank. He just takes random ass deck like Android 13 or Commander Red and then just stops with it. So I think Alexander is the guy who actually discovers a lot of these rogue decks as well. Dane and Alexander really discover a lot of these rogue decks. Now, is Android 13 going to get much better? He's definitely competitive. He's definitely stronger now that he doesn't need to compete with Gogeta. However, I think he's still gonna remain in tier 3. I believe that he's gonna remain in tier 3. I think he's just not gonna get used. I think that's the issue. I think he's not gonna get used much. I think he doesn't really have what it takes to compete with the upper ones. But then again, slower meta benefits him. I'm just gonna put him in rogue for now. Though you know how that ends most of the time. Gohan is another one of those leftover hyper-aggressive decks. And what did he gain? He lost Dirty Burst, definitely. He got a higher margin for error now. Now if you get screwed by RNG on turn 2 with Gohan, it's not as bad as it used to be, because you're not just gonna get ruffle stomped. So that's a huge positive. That's a huge positive for Gohan. I think he's gonna be climbing his way up from like casual locals into rogue tier for the moment. I think he has what it takes to take some events, to top some events. I don't think that he can do it as consistently as tier 2. No, the tier is gonna be as present as tier 1 and tier 2. This is actual trash. Let's just slam it here. Gogeta BR is phenomenal right now. Yes. No. Don't get me wrong. Gogeta BR isn't phenomenal yet. Gogeta BR will be phenomenal as soon as the first regionals pass, because his newest card is so bonkers stupid. His newest champ pack card is so stupid. Like, it's really pushing him up. So I would say that like Gogeta was in trash for a very long time. You would argue that like, oh, okay, casuals, and now I think he's also in tier 3. I think Gogeta is also in tier 3 at the moment with this newest card. Maybe, no, I don't think he's tier 2, but yeah. I think Broly is also in tier 3. Broly, who would you argue that was like Toba token deck level, I think he's going to be one of the better hand destruction decks. Yeah, I went there because Broly, he gained a lot with Gogeta gone, because now he can actually defend himself. I think he has what it takes to top some events. But he's one of those decks that doesn't need to interact with you to discard cards from your hand. If I recall the leader correctly, just let me check before I absolutely embarrass myself. One moment. So yeah, I'm sorry guys, it's been a really long day. Yeah, he's one of those decks that doesn't need to interact with you at all to start performing hand destruction, and that's good. Slug, shout out to Silk, who did very well with Slug very early on in the previous metagame. Slug has some potential. I would not put Slug into trash. I think Slug is like tier 4. I think he's never gonna advance into tier 3, but I think that he's not bad. He's not completely bad. He's getting hard carried by the Super Namekian. I think he's like locals level. Chad Piccolo, I think. Now I'm gonna hear so much about you've put Chad Piccolo under Slug. What are you thinking? I think the problem with Chad Piccolo is that his engine is awful. I believe that his engine is just flat out bad. And everything, you can build him as a good stuff leader, but everything that he can do as a good stuff leader, other yellow decks just do infinitely better. And I think that's the problem with Piccolo. I think Piccolo is just flat out bad. The most difficult one for me, is BT2VG2. That is by far the most difficult one for me to place. I think he's a lot better now that Dirty Burst is gone. I believe that he's also a lot better now that Sin and Gogeta are gone. I think that he's at least tier 3. Has he advanced into tier 2? I think that he has advanced, finally, that he has advanced into tier 2. But I'm not sure. So take his placing with a grain of salt. Android is just casuals. Maybe he's just even trash, but like, sure, we have Shroom and Salsa and Slug here. Let's put him into casuals then. Universe 3 is just bad. It's just bad. It profits more now with the Sin and Gogeta gone. But if you look at like tier 4 decks and stuff, and you look what's in tier 5, I think it just belongs here. Android 18, I believe Android 18 is severely overlooked. I believe that the deck is severely overlooked. I don't though I don't believe that it still has what it takes to be in tier 3. I think it benefits from the idea that it's huge explosion turn, basically. The huge turn where it explodes is later in the game. And I think it really benefits from this. Actually, I'm going to be crazy. I'm going to put her into tier 3. Here is why. When we are entering a slower metagame, then you have control and you have mid-range. You don't have aggro anymore, or like as much aggro anymore. And this is, in my opinion, this is like a perfect midpoint. You can say mid-range. Because she can put out enough pressure in the early turns of the game while still having a massive payoff later in the game. And effectively, the later you go, it's kind of that thing with control decks also. The later you go, the more stronger they are. It's mostly because their payoff costs energy. It's a bit energy expensive, but now without having to worry to run into Gogeta and Sin, I think this just made it so much better. Just made the deck so much better. Next we have SS4 Goku GT, and I will just tell you guys, I will always and forever put this one into trash tier. Nothing's gonna change my mind. I'm gonna always and forever put it into trash tier. I think that this is just flat out awful, and yeah, that Gogeta and Sin weren't the problem with this deck, like everything else was. So I really hate this one, though it is probably among the better Fated Rivals deck. And you know, Mr. Android 17 can just go and join him in the trash as well. Now we are looking at, there's still a whole bunch of them left. Spirit Bomb. Okay, so regarding Spirit Bomb, it did very well recently. It did very well. It also did very well in the past, and Oceania too. Our teammate Ivan, who is our best player and one of the best players in Europe, who tops very often, he swears that this is going to be a phenomenal yellow deck. I'm inclined to believe him. I think that yellow is going to be crazy good. I don't think that it's going to be tier 1, but I think that it's going to be like at least tier 2. I think it's going to be at least tier 2. You know what's not going to be? This guy. Okay, so now that we got rid of like most of the trash tier, because I think that all of them are just flat out awful, let's go into Cumber. Okay, so Captain Cum himself. Man, so here is the deal. Here's the sales pitch. Cumber was pretty last time around. He didn't really perform last time around, and I believed that Cumber was gonna be a tier 1 deck. And the problem that Cumber had were Gogeta and Sin, cause Cumber just couldn't fight those two. He could fight if you're like the best Cumber player on the planet. If your name is Mikey, you can fight them, definitely. But other than that, Cumber just couldn't really keep up with the insane aggression that they're putting. Cumber is also one of those decks which doesn't mind going slower, which actually does better if it goes a bit slower. He loves the slower, grindier matchup, and it's also one of those decks which you really need to know how to play. It's really high skill ceiling with Cumber. Trust me, it's not just, hey man, like a servant overlord, I beat you with it. No. Cumber really has a high skill ceiling. So, here's the deal. Cumber is, I believe that Cumber is the best black deck right now. That Cumber is the best black deck by far. He's definitely harder to pilot than Kai, which is going to result in... He's infinitely harder to pilot than Kai. Kai is easy to pilot. Humber, no. I think that that's going to once again result into Kai being more dominant and SSG being more dominant, in the top tables. But I think that once people catch on how to play Humber and just how much insane stupid value can Humber bring to the table, I think it's really gonna catch on and it's gonna explode from that point onward. So where I'm going with this is that Humber is tier 1. Humber is the best black deck at the moment, by far the best one. Now it is Big Dong Schlong Ku, the Furious Masturbator Ku, the Diku, how some people call it, and now I cannot say his name for a couple of seconds because I don't want to be demonetized. Last time around I put the Big Dong Schlong into actual not into... I think I put him like in the bad, basically, like casual locals. I'm going to do like one of the biggest turnarounds in this video, because like I said in the disclaimer, my perspective was different in yesterday's video, for which I apologize. And it's definitely my mistake. I should have known better. I should have adapted my perspective, because let's talk about this just briefly. I don't believe that anyone can really blame me for still being in the mindset of things that go off turn 3, turn 4 are just too damn slow because Sin and Gogeta exist. Because we were in hyper aggro meta for 9 months, and that perception, that really skewed my perception of some things. And as you can see, I'm correct in this in this current ban list. Like, if I had that same perception, 90% of tier 3 would be in casuals. So yeah, with things different now, with games going longer, can Mr. Schlong himself be a competitive deck? And I think that Mr. Schlong himself is probably the best deck to come out of BT21. Not necessarily the best, but among the better. With last time I put Baby Frieza and Gohan into tier 1, and now I believe that Schlonku belongs there too. Because if you change perspective into, hey, tier 3, turn 3, turn 4 isn't slow anymore, we're really going into grindier games, and Long Dong Big Schlong is actually better from turns 3 onward, then it is much better. It's infinitely better. So I think that Mr. Schlong is going to go into tier 1 or tier 2. We'll see. I think he's tier 1, though I'm not super sold on that one. I'll adjust at the very end. I will adjust at the very end. Garlic. Also, when you take into consideration that the game is much slower now, and I need to keep repeating this because that was the big issue last time around. When you take into consideration that the game is much slower now, Garlic isn't actually that bad. Garlic is actually pretty damn good when you consider that the game is much slower. I think that considering everything, how Garlic is like a fair Sin, let's basically call him, I think that I wouldn't be too wrong to place him into tier 3. I wouldn't be too wrong. I believe that he has what it takes to top. that he has what it takes to top here and there, though he might as well go into casual. But he's definitely not trash. I think he's going a tier up. Because he's extremely consistent. There's a reason why I call him Mini Sin, basically. He's extremely consistent. He plays similar to Sin. He has ways to give himself indestructible, which is huge, by the way, because we no longer have red decks that just neg you completely. Indestructible is huge at the moment. Plus he benefits like crazy from Indestructible. And he's going into a meta versus decks which, if they're not blue, I mean, yeah, blue is also like a bit, yeah. He's going in a meta against decks which don't have protection. And that helps Garlic a lot. Like, if I play Cooler and I run into Garlic, I lost. I flat out just lost. So, like, if you're playing, I don't know, Kai, yeah, you can keep up with Garlic, but there are some other decks here where he just negs everything and then, like, he just has a blast. Oob. Oob is another one that I was horribly wrong about. His 6 and 8 drop are amazing. His 6 and 8 drop, 8 drop himself just made everything so much better in blue. So if blue decks are getting bumped up a tier, that is because Oob's 8 drop. But 6 drop is also quite generic. Oob goes well into long games are longer. Oob is at least tier 3. At least tier 3. At least. Though he might even be tier 2. Baby, I'm gonna die on the hill that Baby is tier 1. I'm just gonna die on this hill. I'm probably extremely biased, but I believe that Baby is going to be among the best decks in the upcoming metagame, and I think exactly the same for Gohan. I think that these two are just flat out the best in the current set in their colors. I think that Baby is just insane, and that it's gonna be just crazy good. However, Baby loses a lot of its team, and I think that first off, I think Gohan is definitely here. Gohan is not going any lower, but with Baby, I think Baby is still gonna be tier 1, and I think that with Baby you need to build him differently from what I have shown you. I think that if you want him to go into tier 1, you can also go with a bit of a defensive build, and you can really rely on the big monkey to carry you. So yeah, I'm willing to die on the hill that Baby is going to be phenomenal. Like, I think that Baby is going to be great, because he has everything that he needs. So we'll see how that turns out. I will leave Cell for last. SSB Flip is, I think it's definitely where it was the last time around. I think it's just high competitive. It is a yellow Saiyan leader, which means a ton. You can brick him. You can absolutely brick this deck, no problem. But if you don't know how, and in situations where you're playing a leader which needs to attack to draw, and if he's controlling the field in a way that you need to attack him to draw, then, like, yes, he's a lot better. But the yellow Saiyan tag on the leader is what's really putting him up. Plus the fact that he really doesn't need anything in his archetype to function. Though, of course, he's better with it. Golden Frieza swap is tier 1. Like, these guys just flat out tier 1. Trust me. Trust me on this. This guy is tier 1. If you think that Trunks Jita is bad, wait until you run into this one. I genuinely think that this one is better than Trunks Jita. He doesn't have the necessary, like, draw power that... not draw power. He relies on more engine pieces than Trunks Jita. Trunks Jita needs the 1-drop, and he needs the one that he evolves into. That's what he needs. Frieza still needs a bit more. He needs his 1-drop, he needs his 3-drop, and then he needs his 5-drop to evolve into, and then to completely lock you out of the game, probably. And then he also needs his 8-drop to beat you. He can also use the Goku and Frieza SR if he wants to. So he has a much bigger engine than Trunks Cheetah, but his payoff is phenomenal and he's very consistent. So if you don't think that he is tier 1, let me know how it goes when you play something and he just keeps blanking your things. Yeah. I think this one is definitely tier 1. I think this is definitely tier 1. I think it's not being slept on. I think it's just being kept very hush that this one is tier 1. Exodia. So here's the deal with Exodia. I believe that Exodia is still going to go into Rogue. I think he has enough power to go into competitive, but I don't think that he's going to be used as much. The idea is that the Dirty Burst no longer exists. So early on, he's going to be great. He's probably going to be great early on because yes, you can beat your opponent if you don't see your Broly SCR. You don't flat out lose if you don't see it. You're still swinging for 8 even without it. With Dirty Burst gone, his biggest weakness is removed. And it's just going to take time for people to catch on to the idea that he can be stopped with having Levisar Demigra, and then if he ever gets good enough, Demigra is just gonna be sighted everywhere and he's just gonna go back to Rogue tier. So I think that Rogue tier is fine for him. Bulma is just Rogue. Like, Bulma is better now when Gogeta and Sin are gone, but I'm gonna say this always, like not a lot of people have played Bulma as much as I have. So though my build is something else entirely. The thing with Bulma is, and I'll always keep saying this, don't drop her to 4 life. Just she can't use the super combo loop if you don't allow her to do it. And she isn't really a deck that runs a lot of self-awakeners. So if she runs into a slower, grindier matchup, you can just build your KO condition, basically, your big board, your big I'm gonna win with this, and then just proceed to win with that. Like, the leader breaks horribly if he doesn't awaken. Cooler, tier 2. Cooler is definitely tier 2 now. Cooler Meal was tier 2 in the past, and now I think it's just getting better. It's going into a metagame with a lot of decks which don't have protection. I mean, if you look at these decks, which ones actually have protection? Trunks Cheetah, Frieza Swap, and then basically nothing. I believe that, okay, you can say like Frieza has like Sin, and then out of the other ones there's nothing. Like Vegito has Barrier Guy, but Cooler is entering a metagame where all of these decks that I have just mentioned also like to play a lot of battle cards. So Cooler just got to the Garlic's big boss monster. So Cooler was in last metagame, he was tier 3, and now he's advancing to tier 2. This guy, I don't even know what's up with this guy anymore. He can use Oob's cards now. He can use the Oob boss monster and stuff. Is he gonna be any better because of it? I honestly have no idea if he's gonna be any better because of it. I'm thinking just like putting him here. Probably wrong. I mean, like, the Oob is pretty sweet. The Oob is really sweet. And he's entering a much slower meta that's going to help him a bit. So is he gonna be much better? Well, because I put Vegeta here, but Vegeta does different things. I still think that this one is missing just a bit more, just like a little bit more to be actually in tier 3. Topo, I think Topo's gonna love the upcoming metagame. I think so. No one talked about Topo at all until I made the build, and then I saw some Topos here and there among the regional lists. Not in the top cut, of course, but Topo is a lot better now that the big threats are gone. Plus, Topo likes going into the late game because he really likes locking you out. I have extreme high hopes that Topo is gonna be tier 3. I have extreme high hopes that Topo is gonna be tier 3. Might not be, but we will see. AOD was good before. AOD is just gonna keep being good. Do I want to overcrowd any of the tiers? I think we can actually put AOD like here. I think we can like put him here. I think he's just gonna be topping still. I think like I can actually put him here. He's still competitive, but I don't think that he's gonna be really topping so much. And then again, we will see. Bardock is locals. I don't think that Bardock got anything that's really helping him, unless I forgot about a card. Cell is probably the best in Destruction, or among the best in Destruction decks now. He gets the Z Leader, which is extremely expensive for him to use, but it's an option now. He gets some toys that the previous Cell had, and basically I think that this one can actually go into high, because here's the thing. I think this one has the similar issues that Exodia has, and it's like, it's slower than Exodia, of course, but it's like, hey, I can do these things, I can do them. I can destroy your hand, I can literally take your hand away. If I want to, I can do that. But, you know, if you know what I want to do, and if I ever do things enough, then I'm just gonna get sided against and lose. And with that into consideration, I think I'm actually just gonna put him into tier 3. So this might be very controversial for some. However, please keep the following in mind. Frieza can blank, everything in yellow can blank. Like, your cards can actually get just blanked and killed and stuff by yellow. I think yellow is gonna keep you a bit in check when you're playing Cell, though I still want to believe that he's gonna be better. So like, let's have him here for now on like some weird copium. SS Rose, I have no idea what this deck actually wants to do. I have no idea. I thought that he wants to go into Tragedy. Apparently not. Apparently that's not what you do with him. I think this one is still being discovered, but I don't believe that it is good. I honestly don't even think that this one is rogue tier. Here's the thing with this one. I hear a lot about like, hey, the deck is good. It's not bad. It's good. It has the counter. It has good engine pieces from the ultimate deck, but those counter and those engine pieces, those are just the blue good stuff things with like SSOS slapped onto them. Like, yeah, they're just good stuff blue things, and I don't think that that's gonna be enough, man. I think that this one, but slower games. So let's just kind of put him here. I think that like ramp decks which can go above 6 energy, like which basically aren't this one, blue decks have a bit of a better time at the moment. Janemba, I think Janemba is just gonna go into high competitive, same as Cooler. Janemba did extraordinarily well last metagame. Like, you wouldn't really believe that this is the case. You would think, you know, that Gogeta is just gonna Ruffle Stomp Janemba. That Sin is just gonna Ruffle Stomp Janemba, maybe even Majin, but somehow, Janemba just kept topping. Like, Janemba topped at least 4, maybe 5 events in the last metagame. I need to check, but he topped a lot. And I think that it's just gonna get better now. So I think I have high hopes for Janemba. I think it's no longer... I think it was Rogue and now it advanced a bit. Yeah, this guy here is like here, or maybe he's just even here at the moment. Though, like, tier 1 is something that I really want to use sparingly. However, Soul Striker has proven himself. Soul Striker has really proven himself, and now, like, think of it, he was definitely here the last time around, because I think Soul Striker topped almost every single event. I think he topped almost every single event, and now he has, like, the Oob stuff to go along with him. He doesn't have to compete with high aggression. Frieza is basically Soul Striker for yellow. I think Soul Striker is going to go into tier 1. I believe that he's gonna go into tier 1. Hard carried by the Oob generic stuff. Reddits. Well, when you're thinking Can Destruction and you're looking at Reddit, you're looking at how much black there is actually, and how much aggression there is to stop Reddit from doing his own things. And I believe that with Kai, with Trunks, with Cumber being prominent, and Cumber is going to be prominent, and with Reddit's not being able to draw much, and he's going into later games, I think he's kind of rogue-ish. I don't think that I think rogue is fine for Reddit, because, like, it did well in the last metagame. It did well. It managed to top some things, so I think that Reddit's rogue is okay. Remku is, I believe, also going into rogue. Once again, hard carried by Oob stuff. Magenta, the boss is tier 0. He is the boss, so let's just skip it there. I have 0 faith in this baby. Not Babidi. I have 0 faith in this deck. I saw it like once or twice. I honestly don't even know what it does. I know that it's supposed to work, and it does work with Yellow Majin Z battle card. But when I think Agents of Destruction, I think of this one, not of this one. So I think, like, this one can just stay where it belongs. This guy right here. So when it comes to this one, here's the problem. If you haven't watched yesterday's tier list, the problem with this guy here is he is green. That's the issue that he has. Now you might be thinking, Damien, you're on some hard drugs. I assure you that I'm not. You might be thinking that, well, but androids, blue-green androids did very well in the past. To which I will say, like, yeah, that is factual, because their leaders were blue, not green. Because blue gives you cool toys, blue doesn't. And the more I think of it, the more I'm thinking that he just goes into rogue. The more I'm thinking that this guy is just not gonna do anything. Like, he's better than locals. He has what it takes to be competitive, but I don't think that he's going to be as competitive as tier 2 and tier 1. Pan is probably the next best red deck. I mean, like, Shlonku and Pan are very, very high up. I think Pan is better than Universe 7, to be honest. I think Pan is better. I think Pan utilizes the Z deck better than Universe 7. We just cannot use it. So you actively have an arsenal that you're lacking in Universe 7. So Pan is also very strong mid-range. Like, Pan has strong early game, strong mid game. It kinda loses a bit of its power the longer you go into the game, but it can apply a lot of pressure. So I think that Pan is definitely high competitive. Maybe even tier 1, like maybe the best red deck along Shlonku. Trunks Reboot is going to be insane. I have it on good authority. Thank you, Cody. That Trunks Reboot is going to be absolutely insane. That it was tested and that it is just crazy. Because OOB stuff. Once again, OOB stuff. So I think Trunks Reboot is gonna go tier 2, maybe even tier 1, as like the blue good stuff 1. I think he's gonna go... I think he's still gonna go into tier 2, because I think that this one is a huge problem. So I think he's still gonna go into tier 2, but he's going to be like the best good stuff. Blue good stuff later. Gotenks didn't do that much. Gotenks won 3 regionals piloted by the same player. That doesn't mean that the deck is good. Now that its Unison can survive a bit better, like he's still vulnerable to Smoke Dragon, but I think that it is good. I think it's among the better green decks. It's a green Saiyan, which means things that it's a green Saiyan, but I think that he's like other ones, he's still just gonna be rogue. I'm not super sold on him going anywhere up. Apeco, similar to Gohan. I think Apeco is now much better that Gogeta and Sin are gone. I think that's gonna help Apeco a lot. Apeco never really got to shine in a metagame with Gogeta and Sin. So I think Apeco, I would put him into tier 2. I think Apeco is extremely hard to pilot. So we will see how this one performs. Is he gonna be high competitive? Majin Vegeta is tier 1. I don't think I even need to waste breath explaining this. Expert Android 21 is tier 1. Just the best hand control deck in the metagame. And now let me just check. I think we have everything. So, tier 0 seems legit. Tier 1, yeah. Baby is my copium placement here. I think Baby is gonna be phenomenal. So, yeah. Gohan, yep. So I think we're looking at a lot of tier 1 decks at the moment. Tier 2 decks. So like I might be convinced to put Baby into tier 2. But like I'm stubborn as a mule. So but I think OOB is gonna be phenomenal. Honestly, now that my perspective of the metagame has changed, I think OOB is gonna be great. And I'm not certain if OOB is gonna be tier 1, but I'm no longer certain that Baby is so much better than OOB. So it's either both of them. I think it has to be both of them on the same tier. To be completely honest with you, I think it has to be both of them on the same tier. So the question is OOB going up or is Baby going down? Let's check the rest first. I'm relatively happy with this one. I think this cell is okay here. I think he's okay here. Trunks Reboot, you could make a case for it to go up, but I believe the Trunks Reboot is gonna be a lot better. However, it didn't do much last time around, and I'm still thinking slower game works better for Trunks Reboot, works very, very good for Android 21. So I'm like, not super sold. I think tier 2 high competitive, I think no one's gonna be made. Because if you think, once again, what tiers mean, I think tier 2 is fine. Apeco, I am not super sold on actually in tier 2. I think Apeco can actually go down a bit. Think he can go into rogue. I don't think that we're actually gonna be seeing so much of him. The other ones, I think they're fine. And when it comes to rogue tier, I think everything here is okay. I think nothing needs to go down. Does anything go up? I'm not sure if like I said, all of them have competitive potential. So as long as the deck has like competitive potential, its placing is fine. So its placing in rogue tier is completely okay. Just uncertain with Oob. I think it's gonna be okay. I think it can be like this, but if you do it like this, you're not wrong necessarily, or if you do it like this, you're also not wrong necessarily. But I think it's gonna be like this. I think Soul Striker here is fine. I think it's gonna be super good in the upcoming metagame. Is he necessarily gonna be meta defining? I think he's gonna be okay because you can use Oob's 8 to drop and then just get that energy back. I think that's gonna be cool. I think it can be like meta defining, honestly. Though I really don't like having so many decks in meta defining. So I think we can just move this one a bit. I think it's like yeah. This is the only one that's currently bothering me, but I can't have Baby and Oob placed like this, so I think it's gonna be like this, Baby and Oob together, and I think Soul Striker is gonna go down to tier 2, but that doesn't really mean so much. That really doesn't mean so much. The margin between tier 1 and tier 2 is like this. It is so small. The margin between these two tiers is so astronomically small. So yeah, I think this... No, I'm stubborn. I'm gonna put Baby here. I don't care. So, this is the tier list. Oh my god, it's not. Here is Cell. Cell is, he comes here and he's like, I'm gonna fucking absorb you, mate. And then like, oh, he can't absorb because this website is shit. And then like, he devours Stova and he just kind of goes up. He's like, yeah, man. Actual trash now. I got promoted. He looks at these other guys here and he's like, my engine isn't so bad. So he just kind of jumps, a tier. He jumps into locals. And then like he gets slapped with an errata, and he falls. He falls all the way down to trash tier. Okay, nothing is as bad as Tova Token. He falls all the way down to trash tier. And he's like, man, I am actual garbage now. And then I get a message. And I see, shout out to Cody and Ain, I see that this deck is actually insane. That this deck has something. It has a build that we didn't even consider. And it is so goddamn good. It is very, very, very good. From what I have seen, it's very good. Yeah. I have seen a build of Cell that opened my eyes. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. So Cell kinda advances. So he goes here. He looks at these poor suckers. And he's like, see you suckers. And he goes into Rogue. And from this point on, he can just go into high competitive. And I have been talking with Cody Wojtek about this. I think if I pronounce it wrong, sorry mate. I talked with him about this a lot yesterday, actually, about this crazy Cell build. I think he still needs to prove himself. I believe you, mate, when you say that this is the next insane, just flat out unfair insane thing, I really tend to believe you on this one. Because, yeah, you and Dane are one of the better NA players with very good results and very crazy decks. So I really tend to believe you on this one. I tend to still put him in Rogue for now. I think that he should go into Rogue for now. Okay, I think he can actually go into high competitive with this one specific build. I think he can get into high competitive actually. Will he be high competitive? We will see. We will see. But you have convinced me. And more importantly, you have convinced my team. And I trust my team. Because they're among the better players in Europe. So I trust them fully. So I'm going to put him into tier 2. This will either be a Master Roshi all over again, or it will be Master Roshi anyway, because I put him in the trash originally. So anyway, I've been rambling long enough, guys. This is the tier list. Here it is. Yeah, this is the upcoming meta. That's it for the video. Let me know in the comments below. What is your BT21 tier list looking like? Do you think that I'm just flat out crazy with some of the placings? I know that some of them are going to be controversial, but do you think that I'm just flat out insane? Or do you agree with me? I have missed some of the leaders. I always miss some of the leaders. So feel free to ask me where do I think they belong. Because I know I missed some of them, which might actually go into Rogue tier. So yeah, let me know in the comments. I read all of your comments. I try to respond to everything. I love our little community. And while you're here, please share the video, hit those like and subscribe buttons. We're on our way to 3,000 subs. 3,000 subs, that's insane. And yeah, we're going for it at a very reasonable pace. So we might even hit it by the end of July. We will see. That would be very cool. So yeah, guys, this has been Damien from The Lookout, and I'll see all of you in the next video.